Welcome to the Prescription Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lynette Hewitt, GP and personal trainer, bringing you health and strength without the hype. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Prescription Strength Podcast. And let me just explain to anybody listening how this has come about. And you have recently started working with me. And I think in the first week that you started working with me, I released a podcast episode that I'd recorded with an NHS physio, Adam Meakins. And in that episode, I asked him his view on Pilates, because there is, in my opinion, a myth that goes around that Pilates is some sort of cure for back pain. And I wondered what he thought of that as a physio, because I had previously tried a Pilates class and basically thought it was rubbish. And I must add that that class involved pretty much entirely laying down and not really much else, which is why I came away thinking, well, this isn't going to do much for anybody. And that formed the discussion that Adam and I touched upon. And understandably, as an experienced Pilates instructor who just started working with me, you took issue with that and wrote me a very polite, challenging email inviting me to come and try out one of your Pilates classes if I thought it was rubbish, which I duly did. But before we get into that, and what did you feel like having just started working with me and listening to that episode? Because I'm not sure I'd have been very happy if something I did for a living was disparaged in that way. So tell me what your thoughts were initially.
Initially, surprise, because the conversation that we'd had prior to me doing weight work, I think it just hadn't dawned on me that you might have a really negative view of Pilates. So then, yes, a level of annoyance and frustration, I guess, but also enough respect for you to feel that actually, I think she might be interested to know how I feel. So I'm going to put it down. So I think it was a case of sort of shoulders up, put an email out and hope for the best on the response, really, and ask you to come along to a class. There's no point thinking something if you're not prepared to follow it.
Completely. And one of the things that I'm going to go on record repeatedly for as long as I've got breath in my body is to say that please challenge people if you think they're wrong about something, whether that's a doctor or a consultant or, I don't know, somebody in Marks and Spencer's who's challenging your request for a refund. I think that we need to challenge people politely, assertively, when they're wrong about something. So I was very happy to be challenged, and I'm always very happy to be challenged. And you'd said to me in the email that perhaps it might have been a breathwork class that I had done, given how I'd described it to you. But it definitely is a Pilates class, and it's one that runs. And I have worked with doctors in the past, one who had an episode of quite nasty back pain. And I remember him coming in the coffee room all hunched over going, yeah, I probably need to do Pilates to fix this. And that's probably where the seed was planted that this seems to be. I wasn't particularly even into strength training. I'm going back a really long time. So that's probably where it began. And then I've heard other people repeat this over the years. But it's not something I've ever done. So I would like to start by asking you what Pilates is and what it's not. It's not breath work.
No, although it can incorporate breath work, it really can. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I've got to say with this. Your experience of Pilates now is with me, and with other teachers, it may be different. And that doesn't make mine any better or any worse than anybody else's. We tend to have our specialisms, our slight different ways of teaching, but there is a core focus for everybody, really.
So what should it be in every class, would you say? And it's fine to just, you don't have to protect the feelings of every other Pilates instructor out there, but according to your values, what should every good Pilates class be?
Yeah. I'm not going to put it into Pilates terms because I think that's probably not quite so appropriate. If you look, everybody's looking at alignment, everybody's looking at posture. Everybody is trying to get the most out of a class for each individual client. Although it's a class, we're teachers, not instructors. So you're not just getting people to follow the moves that you're doing. You're actually teaching the moves, and while you're doing that, you're teaching them about the body. Breath work, very traditionally, and quite strongly can come into Pilates, particularly as you get into it more. But particularly when somebody's first starting to move, actually, as long as they're breathing, I'm relatively happy.
I find that helps for a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah. So really, if you're going on to what should a class experience look like, for my classes, it should be that I am looking at each individual person. From that, as you get to know them, you've put your lesson plans together. The lesson plan is for the class as a whole, but with adaptations for each person that's in there. To do that, you've really got to know your clients, and you've got to get to know them before they even step foot into the class. Have they got injuries? How much movement have they done? What exercise do they do? Any surgery they might have had, anything really that can help you to get to know them, even stress levels in life. Because if you're laying down on the floor, do they mind you moving them? Are they happy to be touched so that you can help correct? So before somebody starts, certainly not in front of a class, you're finding out as much as you can. And then that relationship carries on the whole time that somebody is coming to class, really.
That's not easy to do in a class, is it? My understanding of the fitness industry is the value of classes are you've got more people in, so it reduces the cost to the customer or the client or the participant, and it saves time for the instructor because they can get lots of people in the room. That's just the economics of it. But for such level of individual specification, that's not easy in a class.
And there aren't many Pilates teachers that like to have over 12 in a class. It isn't a case of as many people in a room as you can get. You limit the numbers that you have specifically, and that's how it works. Yes, gyms, etc., they're in a different remit, so it can be that they're getting as many people in as they can. But for most of us, it isn't. You do stop at a certain level of numbers, so that you do get the chance to actually know where somebody's at. You can get people that have been through things quite extensively, and you really need to know that to be able to help them work to the best ability. So building a community as well, though, within the class. Everybody needs to feel comfortable with one another. One of the things I hear so often, I look round and everybody could do that one. Well, you only look round when you can't do it. You never look around when you're the person that can. So starting to build the confidence that it's the client's own Pilates, that it doesn't matter if everybody else is doing something they can't do. It's quite possible 2 exercises later, they're getting on great and thinking, oh, this one's easy, and somebody else is struggling. So there has to be the individual level within there, but they have got to feel comfortable together as well. So trying to create that comfortable atmosphere is really vital. Within the classes that I do, we use whole body weight. So there is sort of that first stages of strength work within there. For other people, there may not be. That doesn't mean a class is wrong. It just means the classes have different focuses, and people will choose what they want to do.
So it sounds to me that already what I'm getting a picture of is a separation between, and this happens with all things, your perhaps commercial gym, Pilates, will have an assumption that people accessing that class have got a baseline level of mobility and competence, and that can be more mass produced. I know that's not quite the right terminology, but that's the image I'm forming in my mind. Whereas your perhaps local class with a stronger community where people know each other, that might potentially be more scope to have a word with the teacher beforehand, share any concerns about going into it. Is that fair to say? It sounds like that's probably the first fork in the road.
Possibly. I don't work in a gym, and I certainly don't want to criticise them, but I think gyms will have done the same. They've checked out injuries, that type of thing. And if you're going to a gym, they are very clear about what they're offering, so you know what you're going into. The same as all of us that teach Pilates with smaller numbers should be being very clear about what we offer and what we can do. And if the class is suitable, I would never be scared if somebody was asking about coming to a class and there was something that I didn't know enough about to be able to say, I don't think I'm the right person, and let me help you find someone that would better be able to help your needs. So there are a lot of differences. Gyms, I'm really hesitant to make the kind of the comparison because
go on, slag them off, it's fine.
No, I just think it's different. It's very different.
It is.
I'd happily do a class within a gym. I know what I'm doing. I'm okay. You know, I'd join in. If somebody went to a class and was really, really struggling in a gym, it may well be that would be what would make them go to find a Pilates teacher and talk to them and discuss what they do want. We all have our own individual desires and needs about what we want to do with our bodies.
We do. And I think we all have a different expectation of what we want from a period of exercise. There will be people who go into the gym and sit on machines and move machines around. And for them, and I will still maintain this, if they would otherwise do nothing, then please do that. I would prefer that if you're going to go to the effort of going to the gym and packing a bag and getting parked and all of that you get the most out of it. And my prescription for that would be to get people using free weights. But again, it's that thing of, you've got to meet people with where they're at. And perhaps if somebody's just joined a gym and that's been a massive step, and the first thing they do is go, well, I'll join the Pilates class on Monday morning because that's better than paying a membership and never going, then again, it's a good starting point. But I'm very much getting a sense from you that Pilates has so much more potential to benefit the people that can access it. And I think that's probably more important, because when I was in your class, and so many people have said to me, well, what did you think of it? What did you think of it? And I said to everybody, there is absolutely a place for this, because as I looked around the room, I was reminded of many patients that I have looked after over the years who are completely disconnected from their bodies. Some of them haven't even got a full length mirror, never mind actually thought about how their bodies work. And there's loads of complicated reasons as to why that can happen. But what I thought was, this is a really good way for people to begin to reconnect with their bodies. So with that in mind, can you share some examples of people who've come to you, perhaps as they would have left me in the consulting room, and the progress that they've been able to make that you've supported them through?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's okay, I want to put that into two contexts as well. So if you go at it on a general scale, if I was teaching a class full of cyclists, then the way I would be approaching that would be completely different to how I might be approaching it when I've got people come along with injuries, maybe had surgery, that type of thing. You're looking at two different things. So the people that I've picked out are people where in the first instance, actually, they were referred to me via a GP for back pain, the exact scenario that you're talking about.
Not me.
And I've got to be honest that when I started to work with them, my first feeling was that for that particular person, more checks did need to be done. They really did. I wasn't happy as a Pilates teacher to just go ploughing ahead without knowing for sure that there weren't more problems there, because there were a few specific things, tiny little red flags that I knew as a Pilates teacher that was not my place to be diagnosing whether or not they were okay to be doing it.
Okay, could you share what a red flag? You can be generic. You don't have to quote from a person, but what would be a red flag that might make you go, "Oh, I'm not sure about this"?
In her case, there was nerve pain, but not in one particular spot. Okay. Literally all the way up and down the spine, and certain positions of the spine that made me just feel I really, really wanted to know where we were at before we went, and for her as well. So we started very, very gently rather than waiting, kept it really, really low level while MRI scans were done, etc., waited for the reports back. Got the all clear to go ahead. There was some misalignment in the spine, but there was nothing that meant we couldn't move. But what had happened is obviously over time muscles and everything had really tightened up, which was causing even more problems. So cutting this story short, through determination on their part, working together with me, really sort of sometimes in class having to pull back a little bit because we were trying to move too quickly, sometimes trying to push forwards. that person has moved on, went on to do breeze rides, which is a cycling for people that don't normally cycle, carried on, increasing distance. This is somebody that had pretty much stopped doing exercise and has just finished doing a cycle ride of the Hadrian's Wall, just over 151 miles in 3 days.
Amazing.
So, yeah, definitely a really, really positive outcome. If I go on further, someone came to me that, well, actually someone that had been coming to me for quite some time and then was diagnosed with a cancer and at a fairly tricky level that meant pretty much everything in life had to stop for just over a year. So very, very hard. Obvious implications that go with that: muscle loss, weight loss.
Oh gosh, loss of purpose, loss of identity, depression, the whole shebang. Yeah.
Absolutely. However, very strong, determined person. So came along for a one-to-one. We did just a couple of one-to-ones to see where we were at, what we could move with, were there any contraindicators we couldn't do. Then decided that actually in a class was better. You know, they knew lots of people in the class, so socially that was great as well. So came back to class, straight back in it really, albeit at a lower level, but real determination to move on. And they've really kind of grabbed the bull by the horns. They're now in a gym 3 times a week. They're back working, family life, really everything back on track, socializing, just incredibly in awe, to be honest. And I feel Pilates played a small part in that.
Sounds like it did.
Quite a significant one in just being able to help them get going. And probably the effect from that was the doing the Pilates beforehand as well as after, because it was so much easier to slip into. It really was. So
just on that, because there's several things that have come into my mind, in that many people say to me that if they already have an exercise habit, when they are going through something like a diagnosis of cancer, treatment for cancer, what it often gives them is a structure of something that enables them to still feel competent, and that they're not done yet is the term that I've heard, which is why I'm so keen for people not to dial things down when they're going through a diagnosis. I appreciate there's competing factors on time and energy and concentration, but I would imagine having already got those strong community connections in the class for that individual, that probably was where the foundations were really strong and it was able to really come into its own, because it really matters. And like when people have these diagnoses, the loss of identity is and purpose is really, really quite catastrophic sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And if, to be honest, if anything, felt privileged to be able to just put at least one step back in that could help really with that particular one, in awe of the person. So
yeah, there are some parts of the country, and you know, we're in the East Midlands and it's not available here, but certainly I know Yorkshire and some parts of Wales have got really big community projects going on to get people into structured exercise. And it's not weight training necessarily. I'm not going to bang that drum relentlessly, but at the point of diagnosis and getting them ready for treatment. You know, sometimes it's called prehab and it's fantastic. It just is such a shame we can't roll this out so that everybody could access it if they want to, but that's on my list of pipe dream things to aspire to. But if it's something somebody has got access to, I'd strongly encourage them to keep going with it, even when you don't feel like it. If you show up and do something, you don't have to do the class like you used to do or your training program in the way that it is, but try and get yourself to do something, because rarely does anybody regret that. I'm sure you've probably seen that as well.
I have, and there are, in this area, it is minimal, but there are odd Pilates focused but specific programs around for people that have been through cancer. I do have bits and bobs of information on that, so that would be something I'd be more than willing to share at a later date. We obviously hadn't discussed it beforehand. It is minimal in this area, but there are bits So that's props for another discussion and
yeah,
time.
I think some of the higher profile cancers, like breast cancer, tend to do well because the charities are so big and well funded. And then you've got smaller things where you may not find anything through the charity, or other conditions that aren't cancer related but are equally debilitating. But that's where I would say to people, find something that you can do, or whatever you've done previously, or God, even if it's just getting a walking group going with a few friends, that can do wonders as well. It really can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you're about to tell a third story of somebody else.
Yeah, my third story is complete. Oh no, apologies. The third story really is somebody that came along where quite a bit of misalignment in the spine and the hip had been checked. There was nothing surgically looking to be done, but on a huge amount of painkillers that were really debilitating in life. You know, a slightly older lady, but certainly a very active one. We're not ready to sit down in a chair and kind of give up on things. And they came for sessions, and over quite a bit of time, and I have to say dedication from that particular individual, doing moves at home as well, really sort of making it part of everyday life, not just that trotting in and doing it once a week. The difference is absolutely phenomenal. It hasn't straightened the spine out. It hasn't put the hip back in place. Of course, you can't do that. But what it has done is meant that they're no longer taking the heavy duty painkillers, maybe the odd paracetamol at night here and there. They are back doing all the things they wanted to do. They're not seeing themselves as written off anymore. They're really cracking on with life. They recognise when it's maybe a little bit problematic because they've really overcooked things, because they're going for it so much in life, which is great. And, you know, they can quite often actually ease things out for themselves. But if not, then it's in discussion with me and we look and we move on. But the thing that I would say is, in all of those instances, they're sort of more specific. Some people just come to the class just because they're feeling a bit stiff. It might be getting a bit tricky getting out of the chair. They might be doing sports and all of a sudden it's all aching a bit more than it did a few years ago. Whole host of reasons why people come along. And I could give a story for nearly every single one of those individuals, because it does make a difference. It sort of opens the door to being able to carry on with your life, really. I often say it, and this is a very unprofessional statement and incorrect, that it's like, I always feel like it's sort of oiling the joint so that you can carry on. It's far more than that, really. It's just a phrase that I remember when I very, very first did Pilates years ago. For me, not as a teacher, that was kind of how it felt, like everything that was creaking and groaning could suddenly move a little bit better than it did before. And I think that's the overall experience.
I'm really glad you've said that, because what you've done, you've almost beaten me to it, in that I think what we're seeing is the same thing from different angles. So, for example, whilst you're looking at posture and alignment, and that's almost your how you're approaching it, I look at it from a different point of view, in that, like you said, that person, nothing changed with their spinal alignment. Their bones didn't change. They might still have a wonky hip, probably still got a worn out hip. None of those things change. I think the misunderstanding is where that stuff actually matters. In my opinion, it doesn't matter anywhere near as much as people think. It's the soft tissue, it's the spasm, it's the stiffness, it's the general deconditioning that generates a lot of pain. And I don't really care. I mean, look at the Paralympians who have different limb lengths and different all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they achieve amazing things because they're well conditioned and they've got good range of motion. So where I would say patients tend to over focus on things like bulging discs and worn out joints, what I try and do is steer them round to the understanding that, yeah, okay, loads of people have got bulging discs. And this is one of the things Adam and I talked about. If you take 100 MRI scans of the general population, you're going to see all sorts of wonky bits, worn out bits. And there's nothing to say that any of those people have got problems. What you can really make a difference to is the quality of your soft tissue by keeping it in good condition. And if somebody is really out of condition, then they come to you. And it sounds to me like that's what you're getting them to do, to lose the fear of the wonky spine, or perhaps the idea that probably an orthopedic surgeon or a GP has put in their mind that they are now fragile and must be careful with everything that they do, and actually just build confidence in moving. And then what happens is, as you see with the people you work with and I do, that people start to lose the fear of how they move, and therefore they move a bit more and they move with a bit more confidence. And then it just has this fantastic snowball effect in a positive way, not in a negative way. But there's far too much focus on the hard stuff in the joints, when actually it's really the quality of how we move is a lot more down to the soft tissue. Would you agree or disagree? You're welcome to disagree.
Okay. Probably agree in lots of sense. The area where it's not really a disagreement, but it's just another area to it. So lifestyle at the moment, mobile phones, computers, car driving, all the positions that modern lifestyle takes us into eventually does affect the bones. So with Pilates, if you can get in there before the bones are affected, even better. Because, I mean, we all see the picture of a spine, don't you, where somebody's hunched over. And it's so easy in life to forget that, you know, lifting up, being straight, the spine wants to be nice and strong and in line. It may not be exactly straight. Its posture may not be, or its positioning may not be exactly as you would want to see an ideal spine. But quite a bit of the movement that can cause us problems with the bones as well as the soft tissue can be avoided by getting the posture into a good state before you start. And the thing I often say to people is, if you've been, for example, driving like this for years, you're not suddenly going to stop. But if every now and again you remind yourself to pick up and sit at the steering wheel in a different way, you're reminding your body how you want it to be. So I think that was where the challenging bit on the posture came, because it's, for example, you would be the first one, if somebody sent you a video of them in the gym and they're doing beautiful weight exercise, but the head's down here, you'd be wanting them to correct where they're at. And that's kind of, you know, we're doing that as well, but at a different level. And our aim really is to make sure that not just within the class are they moving in the best positioning, but that starts to go home into everyday life, whether it be that they're putting the washing out, or within a carpentry job, for example, somebody where you're really bending, just thinking about how you're moving the body. So it comes from both angles. However, if the bones have been affected, 100% agree in that, no, without surgery, and many people don't need surgery, the bones are going to be slightly not as we want them to be. Does not mean you can't do lots of things.
No, absolutely. And I think, but bones remodel, but a lot of people perhaps, and I say this to patients all the time, you replace your whole skeleton. You replace your whole skeleton about every 10 years, and bones will remodel in the way in which you use them, not quickly, but over time. So if there is bone remodeling in a particular direction, it's likely, as you allude to, in that you are using your body in that particular way. And you see this in athletes that don't vary what they do, in that they become very skilled in one particular movement plane, but what they've not done perhaps is challenge it in different planes. And somebody with a good coach or an all-round sports person will have a coach that gets them to keep challenging their body in different ways, so that they are, unless they're, I suppose, elite athletes. I mean, I'm sure for the period of time that somebody is winning the Tour de France, it's not an ideal time to be introducing different things because you're focused on winning the Tour de France. But, but for overall health, which is the population that we're working with, actually it needs that variation to keep everything so that you're ready for life, so that you can throw what life gives at you. But I think going back to some of the more significant bony deformities, if we have somebody with quite a significant, what we call a kyphosis, so that kind of hump at the back, you're probably not going to undo that. But that doesn't mean that that person can't get significant improvements in how they feel and how they move by improving the quality of the soft tissue that surrounds that spinal deformity.
And sometimes as well with that kyphosis, I see it quite regularly. If somebody's moving in a class and you get them into different positions and you manage to get the muscles to ease, the kyphosis isn't always as severe as it can initially appear when somebody stands in front of you, because obviously the muscles start to form around the kyphosis as well. Yeah. And that sort of gives you a double problem. So sorry, I'm deviating a bit.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all relevant. It's all relevant in terms of, this connection between how we move repeatedly. What we do repeatedly matters, whether that's in our attention or how we move our bodies. It's absolutely, it's all relevant. So how could somebody who's never done Pilates, somebody who isn't on very good terms with their body for whatever reasons, maybe it's weight, maybe it's an old injury, maybe they've had an illness, if they were inspired by our conversation and felt like this might be a way that they could start to make friends with their body, how would you advise them to go about finding a class that is not intimidating and that works for them?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think in a lot of instances, word of mouth is excellent. Starting to say to people that you think you might like to go to a Pilates class, you'll pretty quickly find somebody that is already going to one. So obviously there's the internet out there, which will bring up who teaches locally. There's also Pilates organisations where you can find out which teachers are in the area. So I think the initial looking isn't too hard. Start to ask around and you'll quickly find someone. Beyond that, once you've got that far, finding out any teacher for Pilates that has really been through the mill and done the training will always be very happy to probably bore you to death with the training that they've done, because you want to say what you've done. It's you can train to be a Pilates teacher in a couple of weeks online, or you can train through a very, very long, hard process. So anybody that really has done quite a lot of training will be very willing to tell you about what they've done. If for you there's any particular things that you're worried about, certain teachers have specialisms in one area or another. For mine, because I've worked with cancer charities, that's kind of the area that I've gone. I know people that have worked with neural problems through the body. So asking, if you think you need something specific, ask those questions. Again, none of us are precious about clients, really. We're happy to help somebody find the person they need to be with. If it's a case of just a general class, you want to get along there and do something, then the best thing to do is have that conversation with the teacher, get yourself set up to go and have a trial on it, make sure any information about anything that could be needed has been passed on. Go along and try, and then discuss it with the teacher afterwards. If there's anything that you've not been sure about, that maybe wasn't going to be how you thought it would be, then discuss it. The one thing I would say to anybody starting Pilates, I always say give it 6 weeks. All right, if you just lay down on the floor and breathe and you're not looking for
don't go back.
you're not going to give it 6 weeks. So kind of, fair dues there. But if you start and it's a case of you're thinking, well, I don't know when I'm supposed to breathe, or I don't, my arms and legs won't go the right way, things won't go in coordination. Give it a few weeks, because it takes time for the brain and the body to adapt. But to look for that class, check out your teacher, find out where they've been trained. Does the class timing suit you? Where is it? You're much more likely to continue if it really suits you and your lifestyle. And then go and try. And don't ever be afraid to ask questions. It's the same as we've been saying about challenging. Ask questions. If anything you're not sure about, then say, because quite often you'll be voicing something that possibly 2 or 3 other people in the class might be thinking. And just give it a go. But check out who you're going with.
Do you find this might be helpful for people to know? Because I know that a lot of people might feel nervous in a class environment to ask a question or hold up the class and feel the pressure to perhaps carry on. So I would imagine new people probably like to put themselves at the back, just like the kids do. But what are the common things that people bring to you at the end of a first trial class? What kind of things do they tap you on the shoulder and go, "Oh, excuse me"?
Okay, right. Well, actually, it brings up 2 or 3 things, because what I do and what quite a few teachers do, if somebody really hasn't done anything for quite a while and you're going to take them into a class that isn't brand new beginners, as in week 1 starting, is do at least one-to-one.
Okay.
That way, the person's already got a clue as to how you speak, etc. before you go into class. They've got an idea of how to move their body. So that's one really, really good way in. Making sure that you're going into the right level class as well. The one-to-ones can really, really change that. The second one, which I really chuckled at, is going at the back in a Pilates class makes no difference whatsoever.
Don't tell people that.
Not many Pilates teachers stay at the front of the class.
Okay.
They're normally on the move on the way round. So you might as well go at the front actually in the first place, so that you can kind of, at least at the start, really be sure kind of what's happening.
But I think it's the fear of the group. I think that's what worries people, is everybody else looking at me. So I'll go at the back. So it's not to avoid the teacher. It's more about feeling like an idiot, isn't it?
It is. The things I most commonly get brought to me is, like I was saying earlier, somebody will say, well, I looked around the class and everybody else could do that. Well, it wouldn't have been that everybody else could do it. And it would be that they looked around when it happened to be their exercise they may be struggling with. We do put quite a bit of breathing in with the exercises, and people will say, well, I couldn't work out when to breathe. And my answer is always just breathe. It's fine. Where it's important to get the breathing right, and when it can start to be really beneficial for you, you'll be ready. You'll move on with it then. Just sort of work with it. Let your body adapt. Let it be a slow process. You don't have to know it all on week 1. Just allow your body to adapt and start to enjoy the experience.
Yeah, I say this to people all the time. There's no prize for nailing it all in week 2. It's a process. All of these things are processes, and you've got to allow each week to kind of build on the next one. I think whether that's Pilates or weight training or trying to sort your diet out, take it a week at a time, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Definitely. And in your experience, I mean, you may not know what other teachers do, but if somebody was offered a one-to-one, is that usually a free add-on, or is that usually paid like a class? You probably can only speak to how you do it and the people that you know in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, myself and a couple of teachers that I know, because we do try to get together as Pilates teachers, swap and share information. For me, what I normally do is charge a nominal fee. So it's quite a low fee, because the last thing you want to do is put somebody off from having a one-to-one before you're going. Also, in some instances, it's actually me saying, look, I don't feel comfortable unless we do a couple of one-to-ones. And then, I'll set the price accordingly. So if somebody's choosing to come to a class, you have to be very well aware that they're probably not wanting to pay for one-to-ones. So therefore, you have got to approach it differently. You're quite right in that I don't know what everybody else does. But I do know that myself and a few teachers that I'm sort of fairly close to would take the same stance, because sometimes it's as helpful to us as it is for the client, particularly if you have got a class that's been running for a while and you think, no, I think somebody's okay to come into this class, but I just really like to be sure before I make that decision, then actually it's me asking them to do that one-to-one, not them asking for the one-to-one. So you have to treat accordingly.
Yeah. And I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, because you have to avoid the risk as well that you spend half your week, assessing people on one-to-ones, and then there's no time to actually run any classes. It is that balance of...
I mean, that's where, sorry, I'm interrupting on that one, but that's where it comes in, that it's small class numbers, because most of us run pretty much full quite often with waiting lists. So putting a one-to-one in for somebody new coming in isn't ever really too much of an issue, because you're not sort of taking 5 new clients in a go. When you first set up, or if you put a new class on, then you might be. But of course, that's a whole new thing, because you've got beginners all in one go. So you start the class at that level. That's kind of a whole different thing, really. And each person is different. For someone, if they're doing quite a bit of sport already, they may have done yoga, they might already be doing various things. I've got a gentleman that comes to me who's remarkable: weight training, circuit work, Pilates, yoga, the lot. Then actually, if they're fairly confident, I'd be more likely to say, just come along. Just come along, have a look, see what you think. If you think you need some one-to-ones after that, we'll go for it. So it's not a case that it's always needed. It's discussion. It really is.
And interestingly, one of the things I was able to take away from your class was that now, if I have a new client, because obviously when you only manage people online, there's an element of having to do all of this assessment remotely before I plan somebody's strength training program. But as I was saying to the ladies on the group call last week, if somebody tells me they've been doing Pilates for a year, I feel now that I've got a much better idea of what their baseline is going to be. And whereas with some people, I'll have to say, when did you last get down on the floor? Because for some people, it's years. And for other people, they're forever on the floor, chasing after the dog or the kids. So I felt that actually, even for what I deliver with online strength training, seeing what a good Pilates class will have people do has opened my eyes to that. So, and I think that, that brings into, my overall impression that there's absolutely a place for this. I wouldn't say it replaces weight training. How can it? Because they're different things. Absolutely, they're different things. And but I think for many people, if this helps them build confidence in what their bodies can do in a way that builds community, because my God, we've got a loneliness epidemic. And it was very apparent to me in your class that people knew each other, they knew what was going on in each other's lives, and that this was more than just doing the Pilates. This was very much part of a community connection, which, my God, do we need more of that? Definitely.
And they didn't all know one another before they started. That's the thing. It's very important not to get sort of the cliques where somebody feels like they can't come into it. And I think because a lot of the people who come to the class individually, they're actually really good at welcoming anybody that comes in that's new. And that's important as well. It is really, really important. Nobody wants to feel the odd one standing out, do they?
No,
it's hard.
No, absolutely. And I think it's a bit like somebody saying, well, I just hate the gym. Okay, well then, don't try and force yourself into somewhere that you hate it. If somebody's first impression is that they're not welcome and these people, I'm an outsider, then they're not going to come back. Of course you're not. Time's precious, and you're not going to spend it in environments that you don't feel welcome or safe, certainly. And is there any overall message that you would like people to take away from this as a experienced Pilates instructor working with many of it's important to get across, you work with many of the people that I see as patients and are able to challenge them in a way that I can't in a 10-minute appointment. What would you want people to take away from today as an overall message?
Oh, gosh, that's a big one. I think be confident in sort of getting to know your body. It really, really is. Now, sometimes that confidence can actually lead you back to a GP to say, actually, no, I do need more than Pilates. I need it checking. I've tried everything. I've ran with it. And, we're kind of not going anywhere. It can go both ways. But don't feel you can't. because the body wants to move. It really does. The brain is happier if you move. So if it's something that there's even half a thought in there to try, and that be whether it be Pilates or something else, actually go and give it a go.
Yeah. And
go and find out and try.
That echoes so many things that I've said in previous podcast episodes. In fact, I close my newsletter every week with a reminder that your body is the greatest thing you'll ever own. It really is. I mean, and I would go as far as to say it's the only thing you ever own, because all the other clutter we fill our lives with gets left behind when we go to meet our maker, and your body's the only thing that goes with you. And I'm all for finding more ways to get people to move. We have evolved to move, to feel better when we move, and it's one of the best antidotes to stress, which I hold up as probably the biggest threat to our health. Stress is the biggest threat to our health more than anything. So I'm delighted that despite starting on different points of the spectrum, you know, we there's actually loads of things that we agree on, and I think we are trying to do the same thing with slightly different toolkits, and I'm grateful for you to making me go and pointing out that I was wrong. You know, I think I don't hold out hope anybody will be able to sway me with a vegan diet in quite the same way. I remain fairly adamant that that is not something I need to compromise on. But in terms of actually opening my eyes to where this fits for many people, I'm grateful to you for that. So thank you.
Well, I was very grateful that you actually took the time to read it and listen and followed it.
No,
so,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks for joining me. I hope people got value from it. Thank you.
Bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.